Hey everybody, welcome back to the Hard4Games channel. I'm your host Tony, and today we are lucky enough to cover yet another Space World 2000 Game Boy Advance prototype. Now, if you remember a couple months back, or however long ago it was, we covered a Space World GBA that was silver with orange buttons. Today we're covering one that's even more rare. It is the atomic or clear purple with orange buttons, but things are not quite what it seems with this particular handheld. We're going to go ahead and set the historical record straight, but before we do, let's learn a little bit about Space World 2000. From August 24th to August 26th of the year 2000, Nintendo held their Space World event. They covered a few Swan Song, N64, and Game Boy Color titles, but the big news was the showcase of the Game Boy Advance and of course the GameCube, which a lot of boys bought, and you cannot convince me of otherwise. The Game Boy Advances showcased at this event had numerous small design differences compared to retail. They also had a different boot-up sound and BIOS. But what most people probably noticed is that these color combinations never came to market. They were loud, attention-grabbing handhelds, and what we got, especially at launch of the Game Boy Advance, were much more subdued and arguably mundane. It's well documented that the Space World GBA color combinations were silver with orange buttons, silver with teal buttons, clear with aqua blue buttons, and clear purple with orange buttons, which is what we have today, kind of. Strangely, IGN in their coverage of Space World 2000 gives a similar list, though they call the clear with aqua blue clear black with blue buttons. So the clear or atomic purple with orange buttons tends to have less imagery of it. It wasn't the popular one to photograph at Space World 2000. But alas, here it is. Here are some photos of it. Orange buttons, right? Here's a photo from the owner. Clearly orange buttons. But here's one from a stock photo site. Note that the light hits the GBA in such a way that the D-pad looks brown. Here's another photo from the owner. Brown. So, you might have noticed by now, obviously I've been saying it, that the D-pad, LNR, and siding are not orange at all. They're brown. Only the A-B start and select are orange. So this is a strange light and color perception trick that our eyes play on us, especially when cameras are involved. In person, these are unquestionably brown. But on camera, it really depends on the context and the contrast. So here's an image of it really washed out, but as I change my iris setting on my camera, the A and B start and select are clearly more orange comparatively. Again, here's that photo from the owner for comparison. Drastically different. So this is sort of funky. I'm gonna go ahead and put a link in the description below to a video by Technology Connection that explains why this is happening. But in a nutshell, brown is basically a darker orange, and our perception of brown greatly depends on our expectations and the surrounding colors and brightness levels. Now, as you re-review photos from the era, knowing that this is brown, you can start to see the difference between the colors once you actually begin to look for it. They still look orange, but perhaps not quite the same tone of orange, not the same brightness level. So this brings up a few thoughts and questions. First of all, why? Why did Nintendo choose this strange color combination of orange and brown and orange and atomic purple? It's very strange. Now, obviously, it never went to market. They probably photographed it a couple times, realized it kind of played tricks on the eyes, and opted not to utilize it. But that said, they didn't utilize any of the Space World color combinations, so they kind of all got scrapped. The second question I have is, did IGN actually go to Space World 2000, or were they working off of like a press release? Because they listed the color combinations, but they didn't get them right. And also, after putting out this correction, it makes me wonder how many people out there have been scammed by people like modding dev equipment to have like an atomic purple shell, all orange buttons, and maybe claiming that it was real. Yeah, when in fact, the buttons are brown. Now, before we end today, I want to step away from the world of color and just kind of touch on the other differences between this and retail Game Boy Advances. Now, these will be consistent throughout all of the Space World GBAs. Now, for starters, the LNR buttons are shaped differently. On a retail unit, there are little lips here. These are much smoother and just differently shaped. On the back sticker here, there's less information, obviously no FCC information, etc. And where the batteries go, there's no information regarding where to put the negative and positive ends. Basically, there's just no consumer-friendly guide just yet in this area of the unit, but of course, if you know anything about batteries, you should be able to figure it out. There we go. And lastly, the Prototype has that sweet beta BIOS boot up sound. For comparison, here's the retail version. Now, I did dump the BIOS of this. It is the same one as the BIOS I dumped from the other Space World unit, which is the same one that's been floating around online for a long time in terms of like the earlier build of it. So there's nothing new in regards to that. There's no software discovery here. So before I go, I want to thank all of you for watching, and I want to give a big shout out and thank you to Gaming Legend 64 on Twitter for letting me borrow this, letting me dump the BIOS, and just letting me showcase it to all of you. He functionally co-produced this episode because he was very excited to learn that, hey, as it turns out, everyone who had ever reported about this was wrong. They're not orange buttons at all, which seemingly is a small discovery, but it's fun to talk about, especially how it tricks your eyes, and it's good to set the record straight as well. So thank you again, sir. Really appreciate you sending this over. And aside from that, if you like this type of content, make sure to subscribe, click the notification bell, all that good stuff. Join us on Patreon if you're so inclined, and we'll see you all next time.